This episode of The Surge is brought to you by Origin, proud partners of Cricket Australia and powering the power surge in BBL 15.
English looking to finish it with a six, and he does. Six of the best in the West.
BBL 15 is done and dusted, and once again, West is best. Five-time BBL winner Ashton Turner joins us on the show while Bharat Sundaresan reflects on a record-breaking summer of Big Bash. This is The Surge. G'day everybody and welcome to The Surge. I'm Adam White. It's the final episode of The Surge for this summer and we've got a great episode coming up. As I said, Ashton Turner will join us, the captain of the Perth Scorchers, and Bharat Sundaresan to reflect back on not only the final but also the entire tournament. 6 times they won it, 6 times. It is amazing how much success the Perth Scorchers have had over the history of the BBL, which we are through now 15 years. But let's get straight to it. I've got my bright shirt on because Bharat Sundaresan is our special guest, and I think I've out-brighted Bharat, which is not easy to do. Bharat, welcome.
You certainly have, Whitey. I thought you were in a Hobart Hurricane stop when you just popped up, but now the lighting's changed and you have Perth Scorchered me this time in terms of brightness. I know I have a lot of color on me right now, but none of them quite come up to your level. Just like no other BBL team seems close enough to where the Perth Scorchers sit when it comes to just overall BBL domination.
We'll talk to Ashton Turner about it a little bit later on, but just your own observations from sort of outside the camp of, why are they so good? Why do they keep coming up and just being this dominant force?
They do so many things right, Whitey. I think they've always, you go back to the start of the BBL when they, went on that dominant run, won titles, and right up to now, their core never really changes too much. They always start with a strong base. You see some other teams like the Strikers, for example, or Thunder or Renegades, and you see this in other leagues as well. There'll be a few teams who are every 2 or 3 seasons there's and not just in terms of personnel, but just the makeup of their team will change. But the Scorchers, if you go back in time, they've had the big fast bowlers, they've had the gun all-rounders, and they've had the right kind of players, and they always seem to get the best kind of players as well. To an extent, a bit like, I would say, a Chennai Super Kings in the IPL, even though even Chennai haven't been as dominant as Perth have, or the Scorchers have in the BBL, or there in the IPL. So I think that really helps. I guess also the fact that they play so well at home. They used to even before the Perth Stadium came along, but definitely at this stadium, they're just so dominant. And it also helps that most teams have to play them, have the big long travel as well to go to the West. That plays a role as well. For the Sixers to have done that twice in less than 8 or 9 days, I'm sure would have played a role in that. But they just do that. And most importantly, I think, Whitey, they just seem to be, it's that cliche, right? Peak at the right time in tournament play. They just do it so much more often than most other teams. They definitely did it this year. And, the last time you and I were on the Surge together, we were talking up the Stars and everyone else. But the Scorchers just know when to peak. And once you got into that business end, you just felt like it was one more Perth Scorchers season, didn't you, Whitey?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we came into this season, we felt like we had a competition that was resurging, that it was going to be the competition that it was maybe 10 years ago, just based on what we saw in BBL 14. We certainly saw that this year. We saw record numbers of people watching on television. I think there was 13 games where over 1 million people watched the BBL that particular night. Crowds are back to massive numbers around the country, not just in Perth. Do you think the competition is back officially?
I think so. And at such an interesting time as well where changes are afoot, right? Like, that there's a big change coming in the next couple of years, whether it's private investment or, it will be private investment, but what it looks like and how it's going to impact the BBL. But it just feels like for a while there, for 6 or 7 years, when the numbers dipped, viewing numbers, viewership numbers, and just even ground attendance numbers. That and this is around the time I had moved to Australia in 2018. It felt like the BBL was going through an identity crisis, Whitey. But last year and definitely this season, it felt like it's gone back to being that Australian domestic competition. I said this the last time I was on the Surge. It always was presented to us in India as like the breeding ground of champions and all of that. And even if that's not the slogan that they use these days, but it had the right elements. It had enough of a sprinkling of foreign superstars. It wasn't dominated by foreign players as a lot of the other leagues can be. You saw a lot of young Australian players emerging. The whole breeding ground analogy that used to be used back in the day, with bat and ball, some that we have known about, some that we didn't know much about, they emerged. And then you saw the superstars, at least, especially towards the back end, when Smith and Stark and Manas and Michael Nisa and all those guys, Uzi Khawaja, came back. It just felt like it got that star power as well. So I think it had the perfect, this is the recipe, I guess, which the BBL thrived on for so long when it was successful and when it was the second best league in the world behind the IPL. But it feels like it's come back, and probably at the best time possible. Because if, like I said, if there is a big change coming up, you want the league to be flourishing as well as it is now. I mean, the numbers are incredible. I mean, for 13 matches, like you said, with more than 1 million viewers. The final season series itself, the last week, had so many more viewers than we're used to. So on the back of a big home summer as well for the men, the India white ball stuff, the big Ashes, it just felt like the perfect kind of finish you needed to the big season.
So I've got a tough question for you, Bharat. We saw, and you touched on it before, when Steve Smith, Usman Khawaja, Marnus Labuschagne, Mitchell Stark, to name just a few, came back, it really was a shot in the arm to the competition towards the business end.
Yeah.
How important are the Australian players, the test players coming back to play versus Babar Azam, Shaheen Shah Afridi, or some of the other international stars that have come in recent years? Who is more important to the competition?
Always the Australian players, Whitey. And there's been like a misconception, or not a misconception, I think a misconstrued idea about what makes the IPL, right? I mean, yes, you have access to the biggest T20 players from around the world, but it's always been the presence of the Indian stars that makes it what it is. I mean, the Kohlis, and you like imagine an IPL if you had all the Pollards and the Bravos and the big name players of world cricket playing in it. Even though those two players have retired now, but you know what I'm talking about. All the big name players, but you didn't have a Kohli, you didn't have a Rohit Sharma, you didn't have a Bumrah. The IPL is nowhere close to what it is. So I think wherever you're playing, especially in countries like Australia and India, the success of the BBL will depend on the big Australian names, the big domestic products, or the personnel who to play. And we saw that. I mean, the level just rose up. And it also is when like a young Joel Davies or all these other young players coming through get to test themselves against the best of the best from your own country, right? Who are used to these conditions. Whereas like some of the foreign players we saw, I mean, Chris Jordan's been coming here for many years, but Pakistani players we saw, I mean, it took them at least 5-6 games to get their head around these conditions, from a T20 perspective as well. And by that time, it was either too late or you didn't feel like. So if you're a young Australian cricketer, you're sort of on a level playing field with a Babar Azam, even though you might be an international grade. At this level, you're pretty much on the same playing ground. So I think the success going forward as well, and looking back in time, will come down to all these big name players coming and playing. And I think there was a sweet moment there, and I'm so happy that they did what they said they were going to do between Smith and Stark at the end of the Ashes when they did the joint press conference and someone asked them about the BBL, and both of them looked at each other and said, no, we're going to put on the magenta and try to win the BBL for the Sixers. And they kept their word, played each game from that point on. And you just felt like everyone was walking 2 feet taller, not just in the Sixers team, but everyone around the BBL. So I think that is the number one priority if the BBL needs to become this massive or this big league which challenges the likes of the SA T20 for that number 2 position in the overall T20 franchise rankings.
So how do they do it from a scheduling point of view when I feel like we're kind of stuck. The BBL has to be when it is because it is in the school holidays, and that's, I still feel, the most important part of the whole thing. But then you've got the test summer and where that sits, and particularly the significance of the Boxing Day test and then the New Year's test. I don't think that's moving anytime soon. So how do we get it to a situation where we can get as many of the Australian test players playing as much as possible without it having an impact on the international summer? I mean, we know next year the Australian test players are probably not going to play at all because of their heading over to India for a test series. So that's a challenge, and that's something to discuss on another day because there's no answers to that at the moment. But just in general, what do you see in the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
It's going to be the big challenge, right? I mean, most of them are 3-format players as well. So it's only understandable if, say, Travis Head wants a break, because look at his schedule for the next 6 to 9 months, or maybe the next 12 to 14 months. He's not going to spend a lot of time at home with his family at all. It's always going to be tricky for Australia because they don't have that clear window, which is why the IPL benefits a lot, which is the window that the ECB have created for the 100 so that most of their players, and even though that doesn't work out really well, I mean, that resulted in a lot of their players not playing any red ball crickets from the point when their series against India ended. And a lot of them, their first red ball game was the Perth Test. So, you will end up in those kind of situations as well. So I think it'll come down to making the most of whatever time they have. I mean, creating a window of some sort, and whether you're a little more flexible, I guess, in terms of when you start. And by flexible, I don't mean entirely, but just a week or two here and there. Like, so for example, next year, the series against New Zealand starts a little late, doesn't it? Or later. And this next summer, the summer after, Pakistan play their first test in Adelaide. So that will be the Christmas test. So maybe do you want to start a bit early so you get the players available for the first half, for the first 5-6 games, like we saw Smith and Stark play the last 4-5 games. I think that's the only way you're going to be able to manage it. And who knows? I mean, you are talking about an Australian team which is in transition. So you'll, in the next let's face it, I mean, the next summer against New Zealand could well be the last for a number of players, home summer anyway. Stark and Lyon, I know they spoken a lot about playing 2027, but will they be around for 27, 28, I must say. I don't know, Steve Smith. So those players will move on. So maybe they will still very much remain relevant in the Australian cricket audience's mind. So they'll continue playing. Pete Siddle's obviously 42 and he's committed to another year. So I guess the BBL will benefit from having a few recently retired mega stars like Smith and Stark and Lyon and Usman Khawaja for the next, and David Warner's committed to another year as well. So the next 4 or 5 years, and hopefully in that time you start seeing the emergence of the next era of superstars. And they probably, who knows? I mean, they'll be younger, so maybe they wouldn't need the workload management that this lot has had. So it could organically sort of fall into place, because the one thing is, and I'm sure we'll talk about private investment and ownership, Whitey, once you bring private investors in, they will demand the availability or maximum availability anyway of the big name players, because they are in a way paying for the big name players, aren't they? So that'll be the next step in that, or the next challenge for Cricket Australia and whoever the new stakeholders are in the BBL to sort that issue out. But I can see it organically work itself out, like I said, because there are so many imminent retirements.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that the reality is that we saw that when the BBL was last successful, when Brett Lee had retired and he was still playing BBL cricket. You can even go back to Shane Warne and Matthew Hayden, that they still went on and played domestic cricket after they finished their international careers. So there are genuine examples of that. We talked last time about Babar Azam, Shaheen Sharafredi and Mohammad Rizwan, and you've got to put Harris Ralph into that conversation as well, because he is a bona fide international player. The impact of them. There was a lot of talk, a lot of noise in the lead up to them coming here. It didn't work out, particularly for Shaheen Sharafredi, who got injured and we didn't see much of him. Then there was controversy around Babar Azam, and then Mohammad Rizwan never really got going. So I'm interested in your point of view of that sort of worldly voice of cricket. How do you deem success, and what did you think they were like?
Yeah, not very impactful at all, were they? I guess Haris Rauf finished with a lot of wickets, but you almost count him as a domestic player purely because of the BBL experience he's got over the years. But for these guys to come from outside the system in a way, these are such difficult conditions for these two at a time when it maybe like 3 years ago when they seemed to be at the peak of their T20 powers and they were at the top of their game from a Pakistani international team context. Whitey, maybe they would have fit in a little better. They just felt like they didn't fit in, even especially after Steve Smith came back and joined the Sixers team, and that opening combination almost felt odd. And it all, obviously came to the fore when Steve Smith refused a single and all hell broke loose with Babar Azam and how he reacted to it. And I think that's it. If anything, it reiterates the point that it is the Australian megastars who will make the BBL what it is, right? So you can bring whatever foreign players you want. Some will be successful. A lot might not be successful, like these guys haven't been. I mean, you also then look at a Finn Allen and even a Tim Seifert in the middle. He made 100. Chris Jordan is a veteran of T20 league, so they all made an impact. Even the spinner from Bangladesh, Rishad Hussain, had a good BBL. So there are a good few examples of international players doing well, but just a sprinkling of star players. Not I wouldn't say for the sake of it, but maybe they brought in more audiences. I don't know. For example, our clip, me talking about Babar Azam, you could see that, or talking about him on the surge, you can see the amount of interest out there in Pakistan to hear people in Australia talk about their stars, right? So that will always be there, but it wasn't the same. I think again, you go back to that R. Ashwin question, how much he could have brought to the league if he hadn't injured himself. That could have been a major impetus for the BBL, not just because of the credentials that he would have brought in, but just the fact that he's a voice and the knowledge he has about the BBL. And I would always, the only times I would kind of spend half an hour doing my homework on the BBL is every time I had to talk BBL with him, Whitey, the kind of questions he would ask. So who knows what that would have done, but it again, I think, like I said, it's a reminder of you need your Australian stars available and then firing for the BBL to really stand out the way it has this year. We tried it out with Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan. Didn't work out, and I wonder if they will come back if they are the kind of players you want. Or big stars in other formats, and Babar Azam, one of the best 50 over batters of all time, and got a great test record. Rizwan kind of in that same bracket. But yeah, I mean, nowhere close to having an impact, and also ended up with the sort of bitter taste in the mouth as well. The way that whole Steve Smith Babar Azam thing played out.
So do you think as a result of the way they performed and then the obvious Steve Smith, Babar Azam incident at the SCG, do you think that will have a big impact on whether A, they want to come back, but also B, some other subcontinental stars that go, I'm not sure this is for us?
It depends on what stage of their career they are at as well, Whitey. I mean, look, the Indian players, like I said, unless you've retired from the IPL as it stands, like an R. Ashwin, you're not anyway, it won't be possible for you to come and play in this league. And most of the others have started playing at that Masters circuit, which seems busier at times than what the contemporary players are doing. There's one going on right now in Goa as it stands. So for purely on, say, when it comes to Indian players, you'll have to wait and see if the private investment changes anything. I can't see it change anytime soon in terms of them being available. But I think you'd benefit from, say, younger Pakistani players. And we saw that as well. I mean, Zaman Khan, who, bowled that spectacular last over and won them the game, which kind of changed the way the league went, right? I mean, the Hurricanes had it sealed at that point, you felt like. So I think it'll be those kind of players who have an impact. Haris Rauf is a great example of that. I mean, he was an unknown commodity. he used the BBL to become an international star. So I think when it comes to Pakistan and even Bangladesh, you would think that those will be the kind of cricketers the BBL will benefit from, and they will benefit from a lot more as well, rather than just having big names who probably aren't at their best in this format to just come in.
Yeah, I think the reality is that the Pakistan influence had multiple layers to it. It was the build up to it. It was legitimizing the competition that these big names would want to come to Australia and play the entire tournament, and the interest that attracted. And then there was the reality of, well, you've still got to perform. Particularly, I think, for here in Australia, for them to be not so much welcomed. I think they're absolutely welcomed, but to be appreciated for how good they've been. And I still feel there was that moment before the incident to have Steve Smith and Babar Azam out there in the middle, packed SCG. That was blockbuster cricket. And both were playing, I think, a very good role, very much playing to their strengths at that time before the incident. And then you're sitting back going, this feels like day-night, one-day international cricket from the 90s. That's what it felt like at the time watching it on television. And then it all kind of went pear-shaped.
It did. But you're right, though. The crowds, especially for that game, that night in particular felt like almost a red letter moment or red letter night for the BBL. You're right. I mean, it felt like we were back in the Tri-Series days where, you had the crowds come in and the only thing missing was, Bill Lawry and Tony Gregg and those guys on commentary, because the energy around the crowd looked like it felt like it was there, even though both you and I watched it on TV. That partnership actually got the job done. It to see two guys with test averages in their 50s. I don't know whether Babar Azam still averages in his 50s, but definitely his ODI averages in the 50s. And two of the better batters or two of the great batters of this generation to bat together. It reminded me of when very briefly Sachin Tendulkar and Ricky Ponting batted together for Mumbai Indians. That was like, you were like, wait, what? Obviously, this isn't anywhere close to that level, but it was a sign that of what the BBL could become. Like, is Babar the right guy to take it to the next level? Probably not, but you got at least a glimpse into what it could look like.
Correct. And I think the other part too, Bharat, we'll move on to other things shortly, to me, this really stood out, is that as good as it was to have Babar here and Shaheen Shah Afridi and Mohammad Rizwan, the fact that they didn't fire like we thought they would as cricket fans, and they were criticised, and that doesn't happen too often when it comes to legends of Pakistani cricket. It kind of legitimised the competition. It's like, well, if you're going to come play in the BBL, you've actually got to play well. To be respected and to feel like, it's not just about turning up and walking out to the middle and you've done your job. And I feel like that's the maturity of the competition now, because we've had plenty of players that have just come along and they're well past their best, but we're just so grateful they've wanted to play in the competition. But the maturity of it now is very much, great that you've come. That's fantastic. Now go and perform.
And we saw that in the IPL. I saw it firsthand back in the day, Whitey. So IPL 2008. So I was there present. I covered from the 2009 IPL onwards. But I remember becoming a journalist during the first ever IPL, and there was this feeling around it for a lot of foreign players back then, foreign coaches back then, that hey, it's India. I mean, this is one country whether you are recognized in your own country or not, you will be treated like a star. And from 2008 to around 2012, Whitey, I'm not saying the big name players, like the high quality players, but there were a lot of players you would see just be there. I mean, go through the routines, and like a lot of shopping bags I would see, because my office was next door to the hotel where all the teams would stay in Mumbai. I would be like, oh, this guy hasn't really done much so far in the IPL. He seems to be having a gala time. So there was that hit and giggle kind of feel to some of the fringe players from overseas. The auctions were different as well, because it was often the owners just randomly buying a lot of players. But then you saw it change, where regardless of how big a name you are in international cricket, if you didn't have a good season, whether it's the commentators or the other pundits, around, or your own teammates and your own coaches started pulling you up. And some players didn't like it, and we've seen a lot of examples of that. And that is, you're so right, that's the sign of the maturity of the league, that it's not just, we're not going to just bring you in just to be that token big name. You still have to perform, and if you don't fit into the team's ethos or the ecosystem, then you will be. We will find a way of either dropping you, or other ways of kind of letting you know that maybe you're not really pulling your weight. And that's a great sign if you are the BBL, or if you think of the BBL as an entity, like you said. That's almost the next step in the evolution
Correct.
of it becoming that global
Yeah.
superpower league.
It's going on from exhibition cricket to legitimate cricket, and I think that's a great sign for the competition. Who did you enjoy watching through the BBL? Was there a player or two that stood out, that if you were on the couch, and you're a very busy man, so you're very rarely on the couch, but that you go, oh, he's on tonight, I want to watch?
Oh, I mean, and I've been a big fan of him, and I'm sure you'll jump off your seat because it's a Victorian. Sam Harper is someone, like, I mean, you heard of Sam Harper the first time about his friendship with Will Pekowski, right? Years ago, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. And he's been that guy. He's such a popular cricketer as well. I've been fortunate to be around the Victorian team a couple of times. Everybody likes him, and I'm sure you spend a lot of time with him, Whitey. He always is curious to know about what you're up to, and he's a very affable person to start with. And to see someone like him, who 12 months ago was probably not even considered a heavyweight in this format in the BBL, even though he's been around for a while, to take up a role which is kind of newish for him, and in a team that was doing well, which had other big names, and to run with it, and to almost end the BBL almost being spoken of as we don't have a second wicket keeper Australia for the T20 World Cup squad. Could Sam Harper be that guy? I think he's a huge tick. And I think the evolution of Sam Harper was fun. I mentioned Joel Davies earlier. He just has a cheeky air to him, doesn't he? I mean, to bowl at the economy, or with the economy that he bowled in as a left-arm spinner in Australian conditions, in the BBL, and crucial runs here and there as well. He just seems like that classic Ravindra Jadeja type street smart cricketer. I mean, you can give him the ball at any point, he'll back himself. He backs himself in the field. He was someone I really enjoyed watching. And just in terms of, maybe even if he didn't have a big number kind of season, just to see that Marley Beardman spell, because we've heard a lot about him. He's been part of a couple of Australia squads now, but that the pace at which he bowled and the impact he had, got rid of Steve Smith in that game as well. Those are the kind of spells probably not in the moment, but 2-3 years from now, when Marley Beardman is doing well for Australia at the international level, you go like, oh, you remember that 2 overs he bowled in that BBL game that stood out? So I think, yeah, there were some of those from the, either the young or the relatively unknown in terms of the global scheme of things, performances. But again, I mean, how can you not talk about Pete Siddle and the fact that he was bowling 145 and 41? Again, going back to, I remember watching him make his debut in my first year of journalism, going back to 2008. And here he is as a fast bowler, still steaming in and having an impact. So, but it was one of those BBLs, wasn't it, Whitey? There were so many individual performances that really stood out. But yeah, these are certainly, and also the other one I would mention is the development of Cooper Connolly. And we saw him play a match-winning innings for Australia in against India, which really stood out. But then the maturity with his bowling, I mean, we were both there kind of scratching our heads when he made his test debut in terms of like what role he played in that test team. But I do believe very strongly he'll be a big, I think he'll be integral to Australia's plans in India next year for those 5 test matches. I know we're talking T20 cricket, but the fact that he is also very much a part of Australia's T20 World Cup squad, to see a player who clearly the selectors have invested in quite a bit. He had that big moment a couple of years ago in the BBL final, but to see like him improve year in, year out, and you will watch as much domestic cricket as anyone else in the country, I think was a very pleasing sight. I mean, there'll be the Joel Davises of the world, but then the Cooper Conleys who it feels like there's focus or there's the spotlight on him every time he has the bat or ball in his hand. And he stood up each time, and to be there once again at the end for another BBL winning moment, I think those are the players who really stood out to me.
We spend far too much time watching cricket together because I think every one of those players is on my list. Cooper Connolly, the one thing I wanted to add with Cooper Connolly is that we saw the evolution of Cooper last year as someone that craved the moment with the bat. Now, this year he didn't have a great year with the bat, but we saw him lift with the ball. So even if he was he missed out with the bat, he didn't sulk. He thought, right, give me the ball. I want to have an impact on the match. You could see that in his body language. And I think that's why I have such high hopes for him at international level as well, because of that fact. He doesn't shy away from the big moment. And if he misses out with one discipline, he'll want to make up for it in the other. And that's that fierce determination that you don't get in a lot of athletes. So I love what he's doing. I think you've got to add Finn Allen to the mix as well for me. He's someone that he had a poor tournament last year, and I'll talk to Ashton Turner about this shortly. But what he was able to do, some of the shots that he was able to play, and at times on difficult pitches, he was doing things that no one else was doing in the competition. And it's almost, I used the word evolution before, but he's almost revolutionising the way that we see batters play. Getting on the back foot to spinners and getting into a defensive position and being able to hit a 90-metre six. Just those sorts of things that you're looking on television, you're at the game, you go, I don't know whether I've seen that before. So I think he was someone that really stood out to me as well. And you talked about Peter Siddle. Now, I'm going to mention this guy's name. His name is Joel Tratt, and he works at Cricket Victoria in the strength and conditioning department, more the conditioning department. And I did say to him the other day, now, Joel, with what you've done with Peter Siddle in his 40s, you've changed his life. I think we need to have a chat. I want you to change my life because he's doing some miracle things with Peter Siddle.
I know, right? And it just, there are some players you see, especially since the T20 leagues came around, Whitey, who you remember seeing them 15, 20 years earlier as young, these greenhorns, they have this extra springs in their stride as they run in and do whatever they do. But it's very rare to see them add a few springs to their stride 20 years on, like Peter Siddle has. It's incredible. The fact that I remember when he burst onto the scene, and you'll know this better than I do, he was an express fast bowler, right? Or he had that extra speed. I remember that's how he was hyped up when he made his test debut in India. And to see him kind of go back to being that Pete Siddle with all the skills and the wiliness that he has, with all his experience, it is remarkable. And you're right. As a recently turned 40-year-old, I don't mind a bit of that magic either.
Little Benjamin Button action, potentially. All right. So before we let you go, Brayton, we really appreciate your time. I've got one question for you around the 9-day player movement, which actually opens today. Now, there was some talk that Glenn Maxwell may have left the Stars, which would have been huge news if he did. Aaron Finch was flagging potentially going back to red. There was a big offer from the Sydney Thunder as well. Seems like the Sydney Thunder are offering big deals to everybody. Trent Copeland seems to be the busiest man in the world at the moment. We've still got Zampa, Inglis and Khawaja not locked in yet. Again, talking about the BBL and as it starts to move, do you like the idea of this sort of player movement window?
It's so important, and we see it in other leagues as well. Right? The AFL being the number one when it comes to that. The fact that, you get the grand final end of September, and then this AFL talk all the way up to November, isn't there, Whitey? Again, you know this better than I do. It goes on for such a long time. So I'm sure, it's crazy to think that the BBL will reach that level, but even this little bit of intrigue, because you need that. You can't stop, or you don't want the people to stop talking about your league as soon as the last ball is bowled, and maybe just for a couple of days after that. So even the thought that Maxwell would leave the Stars was understandably massive news, but looks like he wants to do the RCB and stick around with them till the time they win that elusive title. But again, Adam Zampa is a huge name, right? He's not just the number one match winner with the ball for Australia and white ball cricket or 20-over cricket as he has been for so long with as a spinner, but he is a big name BBL player. I mean, he's a elite BBL player. So it's good to have that intrigue around as well. And you'll see it more and more as well, I guess, when the private investment comes in and there are owners and not just wise men like Trent Copeland who are running their club as well as he is. So no, I think it has to be done. I mean, and it's part of modern sport as well, right, Whitey? I mean, there's only so much that the cricketers can do for you in terms of the quality that they present on the field, but it's up to Cricket Australia and everyone around it, the media included, to keep that the hype and the relevance of the league going for as long as you can. I mean, whether it's before the start of a season or definitely at the end of the season. So I really like this idea, and there'll be many more of the sorts coming through in the next few years.
Before Ashton Turner joins us, last question: who's winning next year?
Well, can I be parochial and say, the last time I made a prediction like this, South Australia did win the Shield after 29 years. So I'm going to go with let's say the Strikers. I mean, look, I thought this could be the season for the Stars. The Sixers looked brilliant once Smith and Stark joined them. But I mean, the Strikers will have to make a few things happen. Maybe, I don't know how he will do it. Maybe Travis Head will have to show up, because you just know that if Travis Head starts playing for the Strikers, they immediately become a threat. So I'm going to back in my mighty South Australians to go all the way, and understandably get criticized for having made that choice for the next few days.
Oh, good. Bharat, thank you so much for joining us, not only today, but throughout the course of the BBL. We'll catch you again very soon.
Can't wait, Whitey. And the next time I'll try to outdo you with a brighter shirt.
Fantastic. That's a challenge for you. In fact, it's not really a challenge. You've got plenty of bright things in your wardrobe. Bharat Sundaresan joining us from his home in Adelaide. Next, we're heading west because Ashton Turner, he created history on Sunday night as the skipper of the Scorchers.
And presenting his medal this evening, his three beautiful children, Billy, Freddie and Mia, Ashton Turner.
I'm really excited about this. I've said this many times on The Surge and other places that Ashton Turner is one of the most underrated players in Australian domestic cricket, and he's now got a resume that is as equal to I think anyone currently in Australian domestic cricket, and he joins us on The Surge. Ashton, welcome and congratulations, another title.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks very much for having me. It's certainly it's a really satisfying feeling. It's been a lot of hard work's gone into preparing for this Big Bash campaign, and then being able to execute throughout the 6 weeks of the tournament, and to culminate all of that effort and intensity with a trophy is a really satisfying feeling.
It's always hard to compare titles. It's a bit like comparing kids. But you've now won 3 as captain and 5 overall, 5 of the 6 you've been part of. So you've got a lot to compare when you reflect back on it. Where's this one rate, or where does it stack up?
Yeah, I mean, each have their own individual characteristics and reasons why they felt really special to me individually. And then obviously there's another layer of why they've been satisfying from a team's perspective. I guess as a young player, a lot of the time you're worried about cementing your spot in the team. Are you going to be in the playing 11? And, I felt like that. I felt like I was just in the team for my fill of trophies, and, worried about performances, and the team success was a really nice byproduct of that. But as I've got older and adding a leadership component to that, I'm certainly the focus for me has gone a little bit away from my own individual game and more towards the team as a greater entity, and to be able to contribute to the success of some of my teammates. Part of those strategy meetings, planning meetings. A lot of time is invested in this group as a whole, to allowing it to click the way that it's been able to this campaign. So the captaincy definitely adds a really satisfying component to that. I think it's difficult to go past Big Bash 11 when we played the first game in Perth. and then we were locked out of the state for the rest of the campaign, and we were able to do it away from home, and we were, more or less locked up in a hotel for a long period of time. And so there was a reason why that campaign was really satisfying. Big Bash 12, it felt like with about 4 overs to go, we'd probably let it slip. So to be able to then claw that, in front of an amazing home crowd was a really nice feeling. But then this year it felt like we've had a really solid team, and minus a couple of hiccups, a couple of games where, to be honest, I felt like we were really poor, and to lose with a ball to spare, 2 balls to spare and 3 balls to spare, and then have some dominant performances, felt like, we were always headed in the right direction, and we have really high expectations of ourselves as a group, and to be able to live up to those expectations is satisfying for its own reasons.
Yeah, that's a great summation. And this year was interesting because even going into the season, it looked a different team, particularly from a bowling point of view, with Behrendorff heading off east and even AJ tied to a lesser extent. But you did put a lot of faith in your younger bowlers coming through, and it did have a different feel. But then when the game started being played, particularly in the second half of the tournament, it still felt like a Scorchers game whenever you turned on the television or whenever you turned up to a match.
Yeah, you're right. And that's been one of the great balancing acts for us over the last few years. We've had some stalwarts of West Australian cricket, particularly in our bowling ranks. And how were we going to future-proof this team? We knew that there was inevitably going to come a time when we needed to move on and have a look at some younger players. And we've seen in domestic cricket, Marley's been given some opportunity. We know how good a cricketer he is at the moment and is going to continue to become in the future. I think we had really high expectations for Marley. I think the one that's really surpassed my expectations anyway was Cooper Connolly, and to lose Ash Agar in the midway point of the tournament and Cooper to take on the mantle of our number one spinner, to be our leading wicket taker throughout the tournament. He just added a lot of flexibility, and then also doesn't get a lot of audits necessarily for his bowling. But Aaron Hardy, to be a top 6 batter, as is Cooper, to be reliably able to get through 4 overs if required, is selfless, gets the job done, puts the team first and can bowl some tough. I think that allows the rest of our bowling attack, Aney, Jai, Marley, to be aggressive when they bowl their overs, because we've got that reliability, and it allows us to, if we want to add an extra batter to our unit, and gives us some great flexibility.
I was going to say that flexibility, there's not too many teams that have one player that can bat in the top 4 and bowl. Now, you've got 2. And arguably, you could say 3 at times as well that are batting in the top 6 but bowl. So for you as a captain to have that much variation and that much versatility in your team must make it much easier. I'm sure it's sometimes harder as well because you've got all these options and what lever to pull. But that I just feel that made a big difference to make up the structure of your team.
Yeah. Flexibility is the key word there, isn't it? When we went into selection meetings, more or less from the point where Ash Agar got injured, he's a walk-up starter into our first 11, but take him away, we had some options, and we went with leg spin for a few games. We obviously we opted for the extra ball speed of Brodie Couch. We thought that some of the matchups for those particular games really suited the extra ball speed, so we went down that path. And to be honest, we seriously at length discussed Nick Hobson coming in to go a different balance and adding an extra batter, to come in 8, which to have a specialist batter at 8 is a rare luxury in T20 cricket. And like you said, having those 2 all-rounders who are reliably able to get through their overs gave us the opportunity to have that conversation in the first place. Ultimately, we didn't go down that path, but the flexibility that the all-rounders provide it's a nice option.
I want to go back to Cooper for a second, and we were talking about him earlier in the program about his want, or he craves the moment. And we saw it last year when he batted, particularly when he went up the order. It's almost like he thrived with that extra responsibility. This year he didn't have as good of a year with the bat, but kind of like it almost drove his bowling to say, Give me the ball, skipper. I want to have an impact. I want to create something for the team. Just through his body language more than anything else. He seems a very special person as well as a very special young cricketer.
Yeah, and I mean, as is the modern game, we're seeing a lot of the kids who are coming through junior cricket and entering professional cricket who, have all aspects of the game covered. And Cooper's the same. He bats, he bowls, he's gun in the field, and he sits in on our leadership meetings. He's got a lot of leadership potential. He's going to be someone who'll captain professional cricket teams in the future. And you're right. When you've got 4 strings to your bow like that, the law of averages would suggest that one of those departments is going to be going really well. One's probably going to be struggling. But when you've got 4 ways to contribute to a cricket team, you're going to be able to add so much value. And I think for someone like Cooper, we've seen him be picked in Australian sides, batting at 9, playing as a bowler. We've seen him play in Australian sides, batting in the top 6. Bowling becomes less of an option, allows you to play another frontline spinner or 2 if you need to. And, we're seeing him at the top of the order in domestic cricket or in the top 3. And, I think that one of the challenges for players like that give you so much versatility, thinking of Travis Head-like skills, being able to bat anywhere in the order, it's sometimes difficult to find the right place for them because they do have so many skills. Once you can play quick bowling, once you can play a moving ball and you can play spin well and you can smack the ball out of the ground at the back end of an innings if required, and, really the guys like that are only going to add a lot of value to your team.
Finn Allen and Mitch Marsh at the top. I mean, we know about Mitch and he's done it forever and he's captain of Australia. So I want to focus more probably on Finn with what he was able to do for you this tournament in what he was able to set up for everybody else. And just your thoughts on watching some of the things that he was able to do as captain, but just as a cricketer waiting to bat. I'm not sure I've seen some of the things that he did this summer.
Yeah, no, Finn's been a great addition to our squad. I remember Josh Inglis was with him in America a couple of years ago and he called me and said, what are your thoughts on this? We knew that the rules had changed, allowing us to pre-sign one player on a multi-year deal. And, I think we jumped it probably within 24 hours. We had him locked away and we knew that he was going to add a lot of value to our batting. I think that we've had a lot of success at the Perth Scorchers over a long period of time, but it was probably on the back of some pretty conservative batting, and that was what worked for us in the early editions of the Big Bash. But we also knew that the competition and the game was evolving and we needed to evolve with it, and that meant that we needed to restructure our batting and change our batting philosophy, really. And we knew that we needed to start to challenge ourselves to push the boundaries of what we were capable of. And 150 scores that may have been winning a lot of T20 games probably needed to be 200 plus scores on good batting surfaces. And you're right, Finn and Mitch have led that. And you always want your overseas players to add value, and that can be in a number of ways. But for Finn, he clearly performed on the field this year. But the most impressive thing was what he brings to the group off the field as well. We also saw him personally had a reasonably challenging campaign last year, but for him to go away, develop his game, come back a much improved player. We have such unique conditions here in Perth that it's difficult for anyone, even if you've grown up in Perth, to get a handle of the conditions we face at the stadium. And for Finn to now become just about the player of the tournament in what are really foreign conditions to him, he's added a lot of value. We're learning off him as a player. He's eager to learn. He's a humble, modest guy. He's always looking to improve. He works hard. He hits lots of balls behind the scenes, and we're hopeful that he's going to be a big part of our future as well.
David Payne, I don't think he gets the credit he should get. I'm sure he does inside the team, but what a shrewd pick, and what it's just a bowler with guile, and I don't know, he goes under the radar, but gee, was he important to in the second half of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about flexibility and how we're picking our bowling attack, and we spoke a little bit about having the extra ball speed, going the leg spin option. We had finger spin. But Paney gives us real flexibility because he's got a unique skill. He can bowl a bouncer that can rush a lot of batters, but then we're seeing him bowl a really high percentage of off-pace deliveries, which is causing a lot of players in this competition and around the world a lot of difficulties. So, I mean, his contribution to our group this year can't be underestimated. And a little bit like a similar time when Ash Agar went down, we unfortunately lost Joel Paris as well. And that's about the time that Paney jumped off the plane, having won a trophy in the IO competition. He was in good form. Came straight into and it was a seamless transition from Joel to Paney. And to be honest, it would be lovely to have both of them in the same team. And no doubt we will see that in the future at some stage. But like Finn, Paney's a really humble guy. He works hard. He's always looking to learn and improve. And, we're able to learn and improve by having him around. So, to be honest, when the Strikers picked him up a couple of years ago, we were filthy because we knew the value that he could add to our team, and we wanted him back for sure. As the draft played out, we knew that wasn't going to be possible, and we've been in contact. I've been in contact closely with him over the last couple of years. I knew that there was going to come a point in the future when we were going to take him back. And to be honest, as part of our planning for the draft as it prepared is we wanted availability and we wanted to prioritise that. And there weren't many players who we were willing to put up paddle up for who didn't have full availability. But we knew that Paney was one of those guys that we were willing to forego that availability that we cherished so much, and we knew the value that he could play at the back end of the tournament for us.
The leadership you've got, Ashton, with yourself as captain, but then you've got Mitch Marsh as your right-hand man who captains Australia in this form of the game, and then Adam Voges with all the success he's had both as a player but now certainly as a coach. His trophy room's looking pretty impressive. What's it like that the three of you working together? I'd love to know what the meetings are like, the discussions are like, because I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, I'm so fortunate to be in the position I'm in, and I should probably keep this in-house, but we're on the party bus moving between hospitable establishments on Monday afternoon, and I grabbed the mic on the party bus and I said, I thank the boys for their efforts throughout the year, and I said something along the lines of, whilst I'm the captain, I think it wouldn't be an underestimate to say that Mitch has been the leader of this team from before the start of the tournament. His energy around the group has been amazing. He's really driven the group, and I think it's pretty easy for someone who's playing so much cricket. He's captaining the Australian cricket team across a couple of formats at the moment. He's got a lot on his plate. It'd be pretty easy for him to come back to domestic cricket and go through the motions, maybe take a few shortcuts and not be invested 100%, but the opposite couldn't be closer to the truth. He took us out over to Rottnest on his boat, took the whole group out early in the tournament. He's led the energy. He sits in all of our planning meetings. He often stands at cover while I'm standing at mid-off. He's a sounding board for me. And no doubt his batting towards the back end of the tournament was a big part of the reason that we've been able to walk away with a trophy. And you add the next layer, which is our coaching staff, and that's led by Adam Voges. And we make no secret of the fact that we feel like we're the best planned, the best prepared team in the competition. And that's probably an unfair statement because I'm sure all of the other clubs are doing their due diligence as well. But at times it feels like we can possibly be over preparing, and what that does, I hope, is it gives the players in our team the confidence that we've done the work. And when I ask a bowler at the top of their mark to bowl a bouncer or to bowl a Yorker or to take a batter wide, that they can trust that we've done the planning, and there's reason why we're asking them to execute that skill. And the relationship between the leadership group, individuals within the team is so important. And I think that the trust that we have as a leadership group with our players as individuals is a big part of the reason that we've had as much success as we've had.
I don't mean to embarrass you, but I often talk to young cricket leaders around who to model their captaincy on, their leadership on. And I often talk about you and your ability to stay calm in such a chaotic world of T20 cricket. I'd love you to sort of expand a little bit on your style of leadership, what you think makes you a good captain. You've just talked about the people around you, which obviously assists as well, but what makes you a good captain, particularly under pressure, whether it is a situation where you need to get 50 runs off 20 balls or whether it is you're out in the field trying to defend a small target, particularly as examples?
Yeah, well, I'm glad it comes across that I'm calm because quite often the cogs are spinning pretty quickly internally. But I mean, it's important to me the image that I reflect to my teammates. Like, as a young player, what it looks like if you look around and a senior player is looking panicked or stressed, then, that can pretty quickly rub off on the rest of the group. So I think about that a lot. How my actions influence the rest of the team. I've got a really fortunate role in this team, and we've got so many experienced players. And I touched on before the preparation and the planning that goes into preparing for each and every game. But to be honest, we've got individuals who are doing the due diligence as well. They're well planned, well prepared, particularly the senior bowlers in our team. They're really clear on their plans, and more or less, I'm a sounding board at a lot of time. When I've sensed there's a bit of uncertainty about, a plan, then I can add my 2 cents and we can collaboratively come to a decision of what the ball is that we're going to execute. And I mean, the other really important part is how you reflect and review games. And for me, what's really important is the process that we went through. What was the decision-making process? How did we get to the point where we decided to make that decision? And then, to be honest, if you feel like that you've done the work, you've done the planning, the preparation, you've got good reasoning why you made each and every decision, the outcome becomes less important. And you may have done all the planning and preparation. The matchup was right, the ball was right, and the ball gets hit for 6, or the batter gets out. We can live with that as long as there's a reason, and we're not just making it up on the fly and guessing. And that's not to say that we can't play the game live, and we can be surprised, and opposition players are able to bring new skills and continue to evolve their games as well. But I think that reflection and our ability to review games with a lot of clarity. I'll probably highlight we had 257 at the Gabba and had it chased down early in the tournament, and that was a frustrating game, right? That would be frustrating for anyone who's involved with that. But we actually sat down after that with the bowling group, and it'd be pretty easy to pick apart negatives, but we actually sat down, and for the most part we asked questions and we challenged the bowlers, and I got challenged as a leader. Why did we bowl this ball then, and why didn't we think about this, or how did you come to this decision? And more or less, we were actually pretty comfortable with a lot of the skills that we tried to execute. Now, you're never going to be perfect, and we learnt from that game and we evolved, and we felt like we became a better team for having that really difficult experience. But process of being able to review and reflect, I think, held us in a good stead later on in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you think back to that game, and then there was the Ollie Peak 6 off the last ball and those sorts of things. You had a few setbacks along the way, but it tended to happen predominantly in the first half of the tournament. I mean, you didn't lose after that game to the Renegades. Did you think that it might not have been your year at any point, considering all the changes that we've spoken about, or because you've come from such a winning culture, it's almost like an expectation that you can compete every year?
To be honest, I have really high expectations of this group, and anything less than a trophy, I would have been disappointed with this year. Our path that we were going to have to take might have looked a little bit different. It might have involved some away finals when we were 1 and 2, having just lost at the Gabba, then we lost to Hobart at home. Internally, I'd probably thought, I knew that Jai Richardson was going to come back. I knew that Josh Inglis was going to come back. We knew that David Payne was coming, and we knew that we just hadn't fired any shots really. And we'd been pretty average, and we'd only just lost those games. And I sort of thought if we can just somehow get to 4-4 with a couple of games to go. We feel like we'll have a really good playing 11 by that point. We'll be okay. As it turned out, we actually played better cricket than that and found ourselves with the right to host a home final. And to be honest, we played some really nice cricket across those finals, and a lot of the stress was taken out of the big moments in big games. But I did think that there was a moment we we're going to have to do it differently, but I had a lot of confidence in our group that we were going to be able to manage the challenges that got thrown at us. And in some ways, it was nice to have a bit of a reality check early on in the tournament and be able to learn from that. And I knew that we were going to be hard to stop.
The theme pretty much the entire tournament was that the BBL is back. The quality is high. The interest levels are high. The interest levels are always high over in the West with your team. But as a captain, as a player through the tournament, the winning captain, did you sense that the BBL's back?
Yeah, there's a really nice feel around domestic cricket at the moment. And in particular, the Big Bash. I think a lot of hard work's gone into making it the competition that it is. But speaking to overseas players about their experience, players who have been as local players a part of this competition for a long time, it feels like it's starting to feel right. The time slots, the length of the tournament, the number of games, in a lot of respects, the money that's available to attract the best players. The health of Australian cricket is in a really good place, I think, and I think we're only going to see that continue to grow and prosper. There's obviously some really big decisions to be made about the future of this competition, and that's going to be rolled out in the next few months, and hopefully that all of the stakeholders involved in those big decisions can come to some agreements, and we're going to see what is hopefully, as Cricket Australia calling it, a supercharged Australian cricket, but really on the back of the opportunities that are available for the Big Bash.
Now, we waited a couple of days to speak to you because we wanted to make sure that you had the appropriate celebrations. Were they fruitful? Were they good? And who was the man of the match?
Oh, to be honest, we had a great time. Sunday evening, at the ground until the early hours, and then it's not lost on us how fortunate we've been, the success that we've had in West Australian cricket over the best part of the last decade. And we've had a few opportunities to refine what the day after looks like, and we've got it down to a fine art of them. And we tested some of the great establishments in Fremantle, and we made our way along the coast and ended up in Cottesloe. But being able to celebrate the success with our teammates, with the wider playing squad, with the support staff, the coaching staff. It's a rare opportunity that you get everyone together and you really have something to celebrate. So we certainly did that. We had a great time. And, to be honest, whilst lifting the trophies and the reflections of the game are really nice, I think that quite often the best memories we had are the memories that we've just created together. Sometimes they are the memories that are cherished.
Well, congratulations, Ashton. It's a stunning achievement for your organisation. 6 times now you've won the title, many more than anybody else. But the key for you is you've been part of 5 of those, 3 as captain. It's one of the great records in domestic cricket, in white ball cricket. Congratulations on what you've achieved and your team. And I'm sure we'll be back at the business end again next year. Thanks so much for joining us on The Surge.
Thanks a lot for having me, and well done on all of the content you've created throughout the campaign. It's been great to tune in.
No, and I appreciate that. And I think it gives me an opportunity as we come towards the end of the episode to thank everybody, all the players that have been part of The Surge. This is your podcast. This is an opportunity for you to share your philosophies on the game, what happens out in the middle. That's why we've created this, and all you guys have tipped in. So we really appreciate your involvement as well. Well, what a great way to finish The Surge for BBL 15, to have the winning captain, Ashton Turner from the Perth Scorchers, on The Surge, and so many great insights into not only playing the game, but the leadership of the game as well. We hear so much about culture but to actually have Ashton explain what that all is, I thought was a great way to finish another series. So that is it from us for today and for the season. But don't forget to make sure you get all the information from the Big Bash app when it comes to player movement. We are going to that player movement window now over the next 9 days. So whenever anything happens, you'll be able to get all that information from the Big Bash app. So just go to the hub and then you'll get all the information and all the latest updates as you go along. Thank you for being part of what's been a long season, the WBBL and the BBL, but we've had so much fun along the way. And I know that the audience numbers have been significant as well. So I hope you've enjoyed what we've created. As Ashton Turner said, the players like it, so the fans like it as well. But I've got a couple of special thank yous. I want to thank Nigel Hunt for his continued support in the Surge. He came up with the idea with myself a couple of years ago, and we've turned it into what I think is a pretty special program. But this year particularly, the efforts of Will Taylor. He's a very passionate man, Will. He's done some amazing things with us through both the WBBL, but then along to the BBL as well. His passion, his drive, his work ethic, it wouldn't be possible without his efforts behind the scenes. So to Will, a very special thank you. And to all the crew at Roland Studios as well. They've done a great job as well here in their studios here in Melbourne, but also for all the work they do in post-production behind the scenes as well. It's a team effort that puts this together. It's not just one person, and we really appreciate. We've got a Scorchers-like team behind the scenes as well. So until next summer, enjoy the winter, and we'll be back again next year.